At 9:47 p.m., while the marble hallways of Westfield Preparatory Academy echoed with emptiness, 16-year-old Tyler Hamilton sat alone beneath the golden nameplate that read, Hamilton Family Endowment, $2.3 million. His Armani jacket hung wrinkled on his shoulders, a crumpled calculus exam marked with a bold red F scattered beside him, the third failing grade this month. The boy who had everything was staring at a trophy case filled with achievements that felt impossible to reach. When the night security guard's footsteps approached, Tyler didn't look up from the test paper that bore his father's disappointed signature. He'd been coming here every night since the failures started, and tonight felt different, like something was about to break. "Hey, buddy," came a weathered voice he'd grown to recognize. "You all right? School ended hours ago." Tyler's shoulders tensed. He'd hoped the guard wouldn't notice him tonight, but Jim Patterson seemed to notice everything. For 3 weeks now, Tyler had been coming to this exact spot, drawn by something he couldn't name. The trophy case held decades of Westfield achievements, state championships, academic honors, photos of students who'd gone on to Harvard and Yale, students who'd made their fathers proud. "I'm fine," Tyler mumbled, not lifting his head. "Just thinking." Jim Patterson was 45, though the construction accident had aged him beyond his years. His uniform was pressed, his boots polished. But there was something in his eyes, a depth that suggested he'd seen more than his fair share of darkness. He carried a thermos of coffee that smelled like home, and when he moved, there was a slight favor of his left leg that spoke of old pain. "Heavy thoughts for a kid your age," Jim said, settling his considerable frame onto the marble bench beside Tyler. "Mind if an old man sits? These hallways get lonely after midnight." Tyler glanced up for the first time, taking in the man's weathered face. Jim had kind eyes, the sort that seemed to see past the expensive clothes and trust fund to something deeper. It had been so long since anyone had looked at Tyler that way. "You're not that old," Tyler said quietly. "And I guess." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sound the distant hum of the building's heating system. Jim's eyes drifted to the crumpled test paper, but he didn't comment. Instead, he pulled out his thermos and offered the cap, steaming with black coffee. "No thanks," Tyler said. "Caffeine keeps me awake. Looks like you're already awake." Jim took a sip, studying the boy's profile. "What's got you sitting here every night? And don't say, 'Nothing. I've got a 16-year-old at home. I know the signs.'" Tyler's eyes widened slightly. "You have a son?" "Danny. He's a junior here too, actually. Scholarship kid." Jim's voice carried quiet pride. "Baseball team captain. Good kid, better than his old man deserves." For the first time in weeks, Tyler felt a flicker of curiosity about someone other than himself. "I've never seen him. Different circles, I imagine." Jim's tone held no judgment, just observation. "He's usually in the library this time of night, studying for his SATs. Kid's got dreams bigger than this place." Tyler looked back at the trophy case, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. "Must be nice, having dreams that feel possible." The words slipped out before he could stop them, revealing more vulnerability than he'd intended. Jim studied him for a long moment, noting the expensive watch on Tyler's wrist, the designer shoes, the way the boy held himself like he was carrying the weight of the world. "What's your name, son?" "Tyler." He hesitated. "Tyler Hamilton." If Jim recognized the name, he didn't show it. His hand unconsciously traced an old scar on his forearm, a habit Tyler would come to recognize as a sign of deep thought. "Well, Tyler Hamilton, I'm Jim Patterson, and in my experience, impossible dreams have a way of becoming possible when you find the right teacher." Tyler's laugh was bitter. "I've had every teacher money can buy. Tutors, prep coaches, study groups. Nothing works. I'm just—" He gestured helplessly at the test paper. Broken, I guess. Jim was quiet for so long that Tyler thought he'd said too much. But when the older man spoke, his voice was gentle. You know what I see when I look at that trophy case, Tyler? Tyler shook his head. I see a lot of brass and glass. Pretty to look at, but cold to the touch. You know what's not in there? The stories of all the kids who tried their hardest and didn't make it into the case. The ones who learned something more important than winning. What's that? How to keep going when everything tells you to quit. Jim stood, his joints creaking slightly. My shift's got 3 more hours. You're welcome to walk with me if you want. Sometimes moving helps the thinking. Tyler looked down at the failed test, then at the $1 million nameplate above his head. For the first time in months, sitting still felt worse than the prospect of moving. Okay, he said, surprising himself. Yeah, okay. As they walked down the corridor, Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had just shifted. Behind them, the Hamilton Family Endowment nameplate gleamed in the security lighting. But Tyler wasn't looking back anymore. Jim's radio crackled softly as they made their rounds, but the night was peaceful. Their footsteps echoed in harmony, one set polished and uncertain, the other worn but steady. And in that rhythm, Tyler heard something he hadn't heard in a long time. The possibility that he wasn't walking alone anymore. Same time tomorrow? Jim asked as they completed the circuit back to the main hallway. Tyler nodded, clutching his failed test a little less tightly. Same time tomorrow. The next evening, Tyler found himself hurrying towards the same spot, carrying a different failed exam. This time, chemistry. The ritual had become oddly comforting. The walk through empty hallways, the marble bench, the weight of disappointment that felt a little lighter when shared. Jim was already there, tinkering with the broken vending machine that had been out of order for weeks. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms marked with old scars and new purpose. Tools lay spread beside him with the precision of someone who understood how things worked. That thing's been broken since I started here, Tyler said, settling onto their bench. Nothing's really broken, Jim replied without looking up. Just need someone willing to figure out what's wrong instead of buying a new one. Tyler watched, fascinated, as Jim's hands moved with practiced efficiency. There was something hypnotic about watching someone who knew exactly what they were doing, even with something as simple as a vending machine. My father would just replace it, Tyler said, probably with something twice as expensive. Different approaches to problem solving. Jim's voice held no judgment. Your dad sounds like a successful man. He is. Tyler's tone was carefully neutral. Richard Hamilton, Hamilton Corporation. You might have heard of it. Jim's hand stilled for just a moment, so briefly Tyler almost missed it. When he continued working, there was a slight tremor in his fingers that he quickly controlled. Big company, Jim said quietly. Important man. Yeah, well, important men don't have time for unimportant sons. Tyler immediately regretted the words. They sounded pathetic, even to him. Jim set down his screwdriver and turned to face Tyler fully. Let me ask you something. When's the last time you did something with your hands? Built something, fixed something, created something that didn't exist before? Tyler blinked, taken aback by the question. I don't know. Art class in middle school, maybe? Thought so. Jim returned to his work. Hard to feel important when you've never made anything important. The vending machine suddenly hummed to life, its lights flickering on like a small celebration. Jim gathered his tools with satisfaction. How did you practice? Jim said simply. And the understanding that most problems are simpler than they look. They just need patience and the right touch. Tyler stared at the now functioning machine. Is that what you do? Fix things? Used to. Jim's expression grew distant. These days, I mostly just keep an eye on things, make sure they don't break in the first place. They resumed their walk, but tonight felt different. Less about Tyler's problems, more about possibility. As they passed the gymnasium, Jim paused. Danny's got a championship game this Saturday. State semi-finals. You ever been to a high school baseball game? Tyler shook his head. The closest he'd come to school sports was writing checks for the athletic department fundraisers. Different world from the country club. Jim continued. Hot dogs instead of caviar. Bleachers instead of box seats. But the heart's bigger than any mansion. Tyler felt something stirring in his chest. Curiosity, maybe, or hunger for something he couldn't name. Would it be weird if I came? I mean, I don't really know anyone. Son, the beauty of baseball is that you don't need to know anyone to appreciate what you're seeing. And Danny, he could use some extra cheering. Kid's been carrying the weight of this team all season. Jim pulled out his phone, thumbed through it until he found what he was looking for. Here, he said, showing Tyler a photo. The boy in the picture looked like a younger version of Jim. Same kind eyes, same strong jaw, but with an openness that spoke of dreams still intact. He was mid-swing in a batter's box, muscles coiled with potential energy. That's Danny, Jim said, pride evident in every word. Kid's got a full ride to State University if he can keep his grades up and his head on straight. He looks... Tyler searched for the word. Happy. He is, most of the time. Jim pocketed the phone. Life's been good to him lately. We've both earned a little happiness. There was something in the way Jim said it, a suggestion of hardship overcome, of battles fought and won. Tyler found himself wanting to know more, to understand how a security guard's son could radiate such confidence while a billionaire's son felt so lost. The game starts at 7, Jim said as they completed their rounds. Westfield Field, just behind the school. No pressure, but, well, might be good for you to see what teenage success actually looks like when it's earned instead of expected. Tyler nodded, already knowing he'd be there. For the first time in months, he had somewhere to be on Saturday night that didn't involve disappointing someone. Jim? Tyler called as the older man prepared to continue his patrol. Yes, son. Thanks for, talking to me. Jim's smile was warm. That's what neighbors do, Tyler. And in a place this small, we're all neighbors. As Tyler walked to his car, a BMW he'd never asked for and didn't particularly want, he found himself thinking about the vending machine, about the satisfaction in Jim's eyes when the lights came on, about what it might feel like to fix something instead of breaking it. At home, the Hamilton mansion felt more cavernous than usual. His father was in his study, door closed, taking calls with Tokyo. The housekeeper had left dinner in the refrigerator with reheating instructions. Tyler ate alone, as always. But tonight, the solitude felt less suffocating. He had plans for Saturday. He had a game to attend, a new world to explore. And for the first time since the failures started accumulating, Tyler Hamilton felt like he might be moving toward something instead of just running away. Saturday evening arrived crisp and clear, with the kind of autumn air that made everything feel possible. Tyler drove to Westfield Field in his BMW, parking between a rusted pickup truck and a minivan covered in baseball stickers. The contrast wasn't lost on him. His pristine German engineering surrounded by vehicles that looked like they'd earned every mile. The bleachers were filling up with families Tyler had never seen before, despite 3 years at Westfield Prep. Parents in work clothes, siblings in team jerseys, grandparents with thermoses and folding chairs. The energy was electric, completely different from the sterile country club events Tyler usually attended. He spotted Jim immediately, impossible to miss in a bright blue Westfield baseball jacket, standing near the dugout with his hands cupped around his mouth. "That's my boy!" Jim shouted, as a lean teenager in uniform took practice swings. "Show 'em what we've been working on, Danny." Tyler made his way down the bleachers, feeling overdressed in his polo shirt and khakis. When Jim saw him approaching, his face lit up. "Tyler, you made it!" Jim's enthusiasm was genuine, infectious. "Come on, I want you to meet someone." Danny Patterson was smaller than Tyler had expected, but there was a coiled energy about him that spoke of hours spent perfecting his craft. When Jim called him over, the boy jogged up with easy confidence. "Danny, this is Tyler Hamilton, the one I told you about." Danny's handshake was firm, his smile genuine. "Dad said you've been keeping him company on his rounds. That's cool. He gets pretty lonely out there." Tyler blinked, surprised by the easy warmth. "Your dad's he's been really kind to me." "That's what he does," Danny said with affection. "Collects strays and fixes them up." He grinned at his father. "I should know. I was his first project." "Danny Patterson," Jim said with mock sternness. "You were never a project. You were always the point." The easy affection between father and son was unlike anything Tyler had experienced. There was no performance, no careful words designed to avoid disappointment. Just love, plain and simple. "I better get back," Danny said, as the coach called for team warm-ups. "Stick around after the game. We usually grab pizza at Romano's. You should come." Before Tyler could object, Danny was jogging back to his teammates. Jim settled onto the bleacher beside Tyler, his thermos appearing as if by magic. "He's really good," Tyler said, watching Danny field grounders with effortless grace. "Best shortstop in the district." Jim agreed. "But that's not what I'm proud of." "What do you mean?" Jim pointed toward the dugout, where Danny was helping a younger player adjust his batting helmet. "See that? Kid doesn't have to do that. Freshman probably won't even play tonight. But Danny knows what it feels like to be nervous, to need someone in your corner." Tyler watched the interaction, something tight in his chest loosening. "He learned that from you. Maybe. Or maybe he just learned it from living." Jim's voice grew quiet. "Danny's seen what happens when people don't look out for each other. He's decided to be different." The game began, and Tyler found himself swept up in the rhythm of baseball, the crack of bat against ball, the choreographed dance of players moving to their positions, the collective intake of breath when Danny came to bat with runners in scoring position. In the bottom of the 7th inning, with Westfield down by 1, Danny stepped into the batter's box. The opposing pitcher was bigger, older, intimidating. But Danny stood in with the quiet confidence Tyler envied. "Come on, son," Jim murmured beside him. "Show them what we've been working on." The first pitch was a strike. Danny fouled off the second. On the third pitch, a fastball right down the middle, Danny's swing was poetry in motion. The ball sailed over the left field fence, and the crowd erupted. Tyler found himself on his feet, shouting along with everyone else. Jim grabbed him in a bear hug, both of them jumping up and down like children. It was the first time Tyler could remember celebrating someone else's success without feeling diminished by it. After the game, Westfield won 4-2, the team gathered at Romano's Pizza, a cramped restaurant with checkered tablecloths and the best garlic knots Tyler had ever tasted. He sat between Jim and Danny, listening to teammates rehash every play, every moment of victory. "So Tyler," Danny said over a slice of pepperoni, "Dad says you go to Westfield too. How come I've never seen you around?" Tyler felt the familiar flush of shame. "Different crowd, I guess. I'm not really involved in much. What are you into, besides sitting in hallways at midnight?" Danny's grin took the sting out of the words. "Honestly, I don't know anymore." Tyler surprised himself with the honesty. "I used to think I was into academic success, but that's not working out so well. Grades aren't everything," said Marcus, the team's catcher. "I mean, they're important, but they're not everything." "Easy for you to say." Tyler muttered. "Your parents probably don't threaten to disown you over a chemistry test." The table went quiet. Tyler immediately regretted speaking, but Danny leaned forward with interest. "Your parents do that?" "My father does. My mother isn't around anymore." Tyler had never said it so plainly before. Jim's hand briefly touched Tyler's shoulder. "Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us most make it the hardest to love ourselves." "That's deep, Mr. P," Marcus said. "You should write fortune cookies." The laughter that followed was gentle, inclusive. Tyler realized he was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in weeks. As the evening wound down, Jim drove Tyler back to his car. The BMW looked almost embarrassed next to Jim's modest Honda Civic. "Thanks," Tyler said, "for tonight, for everything." "Tyler," Jim said seriously, "can I ask you something?" Tyler nodded. "When's the last time you felt proud of yourself? Not because someone else was proud, not because you met some expectation, but because you did something that mattered to you?" Tyler thought for a long moment. "I honestly can't remember." "Well," Jim said, "maybe it's time to start building some memories worth keeping." As Tyler drove home through the quiet streets of Connecticut, he thought about Danny's easy confidence, Jim's quiet wisdom, the way the team had included him without question. At home, the mansion felt more hollow than ever, but Tyler carried something new inside him, the possibility that belonging wasn't something you bought or inherited, but something you earned through showing up again and again until people started counting on you to be there. His phone buzzed with a text from Danny. "Good having you there tonight. Same time next week? Dad says you're welcome anytime." Tyler typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." For the first time in months, that felt like a promise he could keep. 3 weeks into their friendship, Tyler had established a routine that felt more natural than anything in his privileged life. Evenings were spent with Jim during security rounds, weekends meant baseball games and pizza with Danny's teammates, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, Tyler's grades began to improve. Not because of expensive tutors or pressure from his father, but because he'd found something worth working for, the respect of people who mattered to him. The change didn't go unnoticed at home. "You seem different lately," Richard Hamilton observed over breakfast on a Tuesday morning. It was one of the rare occasions when his father was home long enough for a meal. "More focused. Your chemistry teacher says you're actually participating in class." Tyler kept his eyes on his eggs Benedict. "Just trying harder, I guess." "Good. Keep it up. The Princeton Admissions Committee doesn't accept excuses, only results." Richard's phone buzzed, and his attention immediately shifted. "I have to take this. Board meeting with our construction division." Tyler's head snapped up at the mention of construction, but his father was already walking away, phone pressed to his ear. "No, I don't care what the union says about safety protocols. We have deadlines to meet." That evening, Tyler arrived early for his usual rounds with Jim. He found the security guard in his small office, reviewing maintenance logs and sipping coffee from a mug that read, "World's #1 Dad." Clearly a Father's Day gift from Danny. "You're early tonight," Jim observed, looking up with his characteristic warm smile. "Yeah, Tyler hesitated, then pulled out his latest chemistry test. "I wanted to show you this." The paper bore a solid B+, marked with encouraging comments from Mrs. Rodriguez. Jim's smile grew wider as he examined it. "Now that's what I'm talking about. You see? You're not broken, Tyler. You just needed to remember what you're working for." Tyler settled into the chair across from Jim's desk, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the office heater. As Jim set down the test, Tyler noticed him wince slightly, his hand going to his left shoulder. "You okay?" "Old injury acting up. Weather's changing." Jim rubbed his shoulder absently. "Occupational hazard from my construction days." "You worked construction?" 8 years. Started right after high school. Worked my way up to site supervisor. Jim's expression grew distant. Good work, honest work, until... He trailed off, his hand still massaging his shoulder. Tyler waited, sensing this was important. Until what? Until I learned that not all companies value their workers the way they should. Jim's voice carried a weight Tyler had never heard before. Sometimes profit matters more than people. Tyler was about to ask more when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. His father, calling at nearly 10 p.m. "Sorry, I should take this." "Tyler." Richard Hamilton's voice was sharp, impatient. "Where are you?" "At school, studying." "This late? With whom?" Tyler's eyes met Jim's, and he made a split-second decision. "Just by myself. In the library." "Well, get home. I need to discuss your progress with you." "And Tyler, leave your wallet. I found something interesting in it earlier." The line went dead. Tyler's blood ran cold as he remembered. He'd left his wallet in Jim's office the night before, forgotten in his hurry to get to Danny's game. Jim had returned it that morning. But... "Tyler?" Jim's voice seemed to come from far away. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Tyler's hands were shaking as he pulled out his wallet, frantically checking the contents. Everything was there: credit cards, cash, student ID. But his father's business card, the one Tyler carried everywhere as a reminder of expectations and legacy, was slightly askew, as if someone had... "Jim," Tyler said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Last night, when I left my wallet here." Jim had gone very still. His coffee mug sat forgotten in his hands, and Tyler noticed they were trembling slightly. Did you look through it?" The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, Jim set down his mug and reached into his desk drawer. He pulled out a business card. Expensive stock, gold lettering, unmistakably corporate. "Richard Hamilton." Jim read quietly. "CEO, Hamilton Corporation." Tyler's world tilted. The way Jim held the card, like it might burn him, the sudden pallor of his face, the way his breathing had changed. "You know my father." It wasn't a question. Jim's expression was answer enough, pain and recognition and something that looked like grief. "Jim, what did my father do to you?" Jim was quiet for so long that Tyler thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. 8 years ago, I was building your father's new downtown office complex. 40-story tower, state-of-the-art design. I was proud to be part of it." Tyler's stomach clenched. He'd seen that building, had attended the grand opening with his father. March 15th, 2016. The scaffolding on the 32nd floor collapsed during a windstorm. Safety protocols hadn't been properly followed, corners cut to meet an impossible deadline. Jim's hands were steady now, but his voice carried the weight of old trauma. 3 men died that day, Tyler. Good men, with families, with dreams. "Oh, God," Tyler whispered. "I was lucky. Broke my back, shattered my left leg, spent 6 months in the hospital. But I was alive." Jim looked directly at Tyler then, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. "Your father's company denied responsibility, called it an act of God, worker negligence, anything but corporate liability. No compensation, no support, no acknowledgement of what we'd lost." Tyler felt like he was drowning. "Jim, Melody, my wife. She got sick while I was recovering. Cancer. We'd lost our health insurance when I couldn't work, and the legal bills from fighting your father's company." Jim's voice broke. "We couldn't afford her treatment. Not the good treatment, not the kind that might have saved her." The office seemed to spin around Tyler. She died because we lost everything fighting for what was right. The house, our savings, our hope. I watched the woman I loved waste away in a county hospital bed because Richard Hamilton's lawyers were better than our truth. Tyler was crying now, ugly tears that came from somewhere deep in his chest. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Tyler, you must hate me." The words came out in a rush. "You must look at me and see everything that's wrong with the world. All this time I thought I'd found someone who actually cared about me, but you probably just—" "Stop." Jim's voice was firm but gentle. He moved around the desk and knelt in front of Tyler's chair, the same way Tyler had seen him comfort Danny after a bad game. "Look at me, son." Tyler forced himself to meet Jim's eyes. "You are not your father. You never were, and you never will be. But I'm his son. I benefit from what he did to you. This school, this life, everything I have is built on his choices, not yours." Jim's hands were steady on Tyler's shoulders. "Tyler, I could hate you. God knows when I first saw that business card, I wanted to. For about 5 minutes, I let myself imagine what it would feel like to make you pay for his sins." Tyler's breath hitched. "But then I remembered who you are. The kid who sits in hallways because he's lost, not because he's entitled. The boy who cheers for my son like family, who helps clear tables at Romano's, who asks how my day was, and actually listens to the answer." Jim's voice grew stronger. "You want to know what your father took from me? My health, my home, my wife. But you know what he can never take." Tyler shook his head. "My choice to love. And I choose to love you like my own son, Tyler. Because that's who I am, not who he made me." The dam broke completely then. Tyler sobbed into Jim's shoulder while the older man held him, the way fathers are supposed to hold their sons when the world falls apart. And in that moment, Tyler understood what Jim had been trying to teach him all along. That family isn't about blood or money or even justice. It's about showing up, again and again, and choosing love even when everything else falls away. "I don't deserve you," Tyler whispered. "Son," Jim said softly, "family isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And I choose you, Tyler Hamilton. Past, present, and future." Outside, the wind was picking up, rattling the windows of Westfield Prep. But inside Jim's small office, two souls who had found each other across an impossible divide held on tight, proving that sometimes the most unlikely families are the strongest ones of all. Tyler drove home through the Connecticut night with Jim's words echoing in his mind. "You are not your father." But as he pulled into the circular driveway of the Hamilton mansion, that distinction felt impossibly thin. The house loomed before him, all glass and steel and cold success, built on a foundation Tyler was only now beginning to understand. His father was waiting in his study, a brandy snifter in one hand, and Tyler's academic reports spread across his mahogany desk. The room smelled of leather and expensive whiskey and the kind of power that crushed people like Jim Patterson without a second thought. "Sit," Richard commanded without looking up. Tyler remained standing. "Dad, we need to talk." "Indeed we do." Richard finally raised his eyes, and Tyler saw none of the warmth he'd grown accustomed to in Jim's gaze. "Your grades are improving, significantly. I'm curious about this sudden transformation." "I found motivation." "From whom?" Richard's tone was sharp. "You mentioned studying alone, but your chemistry teacher says you've been asking for extra help, staying after class. Your behavior suggests mentorship. I want to know who's been influencing my son." Tyler's hands clenched at his sides. "Someone who actually cares about me." "I care about you, Tyler. Everything I do is for your future." "No," Tyler said, surprise in his own voice at the firmness of it. "Everything you do is for your legacy. There's a difference." Richard set down his brandy, attention fully focused now. "Excuse me?" "Jim Patterson," Tyler said, the name hanging between them like a weapon. "He's been helping me. Not with grades, not with college prep, but with figuring out who I want to be. The effect was immediate. Richard's face went white, then flushed with something Tyler had never seen before. Fear. Patterson. Richard repeated slowly. Where did you hear that name? He works at my school. Night security. He's also the best man I've ever known. Richard stood abruptly, his chair rolling back. You stay away from him, Tyler. Do you understand me? Whatever game he's playing... Game? Tyler's voice rose. The only game here is the one you've been playing with people's lives. I know what you did to him, Dad. I know about the construction accident, about his wife, about how your company destroyed his family. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard's breathing was audible, controlled but strained. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously quiet. That was business, Tyler. Unfortunate, but business. These things happen in construction. We followed all legal protocols. Legal doesn't mean right. Right? Richard's laugh was harsh. Tyler, you live in a house worth $12 million. You drive a car that costs more than most people make in 2 years. You attend a school that charges $50,000 in tuition. All of that comes from business decisions that weak men might call harsh. I've built an empire so you never have to worry about money, security, or status. And you want to lecture me about right and wrong? Tyler felt something crystallizing inside him, a clarity he'd never experienced before. Yeah, Dad, I do. This Patterson man has poisoned your mind against me. No, Tyler said firmly. He taught me the difference between success and character. And he taught me that you can have all the money in the world and still be a failure as a human being. Richard's face darkened. You ungrateful. I'm grateful. Tyler interrupted. I'm grateful that Jim showed me what a real father looks like. I'm grateful that Danny treats me like a brother, even though he has every reason to hate me. I'm grateful that I found a family that values love over profit margins. Family. Richard's voice was incredulous. Tyler, you're Richard Hamilton's son. That man is a security guard. His son is a scholarship student. They are not your peers, they are not your equals, and they are certainly not your family. Tyler walked to the window, looking out at the manicured grounds, the tennis court he'd never used, the pool that had hosted exactly 0 friends in the 3 years they'd lived here. When he turned back, his decision was clear. You're right about one thing, Dad. We're not equals. They're better than us. They've been through hell and came out caring about other people. We've had everything handed to us and still can't figure out how to be decent. Tyler, you're being emotional. Irrational. This man is clearly manipulating you for money, for access. He doesn't even know who you are, Tyler shouted, then caught himself. I mean, he didn't until tonight. For weeks he just cared about me. Because that's what he does. He sees someone hurting and he helps them. When's the last time you helped someone who couldn't help you back? Richard was quiet for a long moment, his corporate mask slipping to reveal something Tyler had never seen before. Uncertainty. Tyler, he said finally, you're my son, my only child. Everything I've built will be yours someday. Don't throw that away for some misguided sense of nobility. What if I don't want it? The words surprised even Tyler. He hadn't known he was going to say them until they were out. Don't be ridiculous. I'm serious, Dad. What if I don't want a legacy built on other people's suffering? What if I want to earn something for myself, the way Jim and Danny have? Richard's composure finally cracked. You have no idea what the real world is like, Tyler. No idea how hard it is to build something lasting. You want to throw away everything I've given you for what? The approval of a broken-down construction worker and his scholarship son? They're not broken down, Tyler said quietly. They're the strongest people I know. And Dad? They don't need my approval. They love me anyway. The word hung in the air between them. Love. When was the last time Tyler had heard his father say it? When was the last time Tyler had felt it? If you continue this relationship, Richard said slowly, there will be consequences. I can transfer you to boarding school. I can cut off your access to everything you've grown accustomed to. I can make sure you never see these people again. Tyler looked at his father, really looked at him, and saw a man who had confused power with love for so long that he'd forgotten the difference entirely. Do it, Tyler said simply. Richard blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Do all of it, Dad. Transfer me. Cut me off. Take away every material thing you think defines me. Because you know what? I finally understand what Jim's been trying to teach me. I'm not Tyler Hamilton, heir to a fortune built on other people's pain. I'm Tyler, Danny's friend, Jim's son. And that's worth more than everything in this house combined. Tyler turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Dad? The secret Jim taught me. It wasn't about study techniques or test-taking strategies. It was about learning that I'm worthy of love just as I am, something you never figured out how to teach me. He walked out of his father's study, leaving Richard Hamilton alone with his brandy and his empire and the dawning realization that he'd raised a son with a conscience he couldn't control. Tyler packed a single bag that night: clothes, his laptop, the photo of him and Danny at the championship game. He left behind the designer shoes, the expensive watch, everything that screamed privilege. At dawn, he drove to the modest apartment complex where Jim and Danny lived, his BMW looking absurdly out of place in the parking lot. Jim answered the door in his bathrobe, coffee mug in hand, clearly surprised to see Tyler so early. Son, what's wrong? I told him. Tyler said simply. I told my father everything. About you, about what he did, about how you're more of a father to me than he's ever been. Jim's expression grew serious. Tyler, what did you do? I chose you. I chose Danny. I chose family over money. Tyler's voice was steady, certain. And I was wondering, I know it's a lot to ask, but could I stay here? Just until I figure things out? Jim didn't hesitate. He stepped aside, gesturing Tyler into the small apartment. Danny, he called down the hallway. Put on some coffee. We've got a new family member. 6 months later, Tyler Hamilton stood at the podium in Westfield Preparatory Academy's main auditorium, looking out at a sea of faces that included his classmates, their families, and in the third row, Jim and Danny Patterson. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on him. 6 months ago, he'd been a failing student sitting alone in hallways, and now he was about to deliver the valedictorian address. But the real transformation wasn't in his grades, though those had soared once he'd found purpose beyond avoiding disappointment. It wasn't in his acceptance to MIT with a full scholarship, though that had surprised everyone except Jim, who'd never doubted Tyler's capabilities. The real transformation was in the young man who'd learned that success meant showing up for people, not showing off to them. When I started my senior year, Tyler began, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium, I thought I knew what failure looked like. It looked like red Fs on test papers. It looked like disappointed sighs from teachers. It looked like the crushing weight of expectations I could never seem to meet. In the audience, he spotted his father, sitting alone in the back row. Richard Hamilton had aged in the past 6 months, though whether from the ongoing investigation into Hamilton Corporation's safety violations or from the realization that he'd lost his son's respect was unclear. They'd spoken only once since that night in the study, a stilted conversation where Richard had offered reconciliation in exchange for Tyler's return to the family fold. Tyler had declined, gently but firmly. But I learned something important this year. Tyler continued. Failure isn't about test scores or college acceptances or living up to other people's definitions of success. Real failure is about giving up on yourself, or worse, giving up on other people. Jim was beaming in the third row, Danny beside him wearing his Westfield baseball championship ring. The team had gone on to win the state title, with Danny earning MVP honors and a full ride to State University. More importantly, Danny had become the brother Tyler had never known he wanted, the person who challenged him to be better without ever making him feel like he wasn't enough. "The secret to success," Tyler said, his eyes finding Jim's across the crowded auditorium, "isn't about having all the answers. It's about finding the right questions. Not, how can I avoid failing? But how can I help someone else succeed? Not, what can I get? But what can I give?" The past 6 months living with the Pattersons had been the happiest of Tyler's life. The apartment was cramped, the furniture second-hand, the grocery budget tight, but it was filled with something Tyler's mansion had never contained: unconditional love. Jim never asked about Tyler's grades, though he celebrated each success. He never criticized Tyler's choice to give up his inheritance, though he worried about the boy's financial future. He simply loved Tyler the way he loved Danny, completely, without reservation, without conditions. "I learned this secret from a man who lost everything: his health, his home, his wife, but who never lost his capacity to see the good in people. A man who looked at a failing, privileged teenager and saw potential instead of problems. A man who proved that the richest families aren't necessarily the ones with the most money, but the ones with the most love." Tyler's voice caught slightly as he spoke the next words. "They say blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The family you choose, the people who choose you back, that's the foundation of real success." In the audience, several parents were crying, including Mrs. Rodriguez, Tyler's chemistry teacher, who'd watched his transformation with amazement. Even some of Tyler's former classmates, the ones who'd mocked his friendship with the help, seemed moved by his words. "The secret I learned isn't about studying harder or test-taking strategies, though those things matter. The secret is about learning that you're worthy of love just as you are, and then extending that same unconditional acceptance to others. When you know you're loved, everything else, grades, goals, dreams, falls into place." Tyler's eyes found his father's across the auditorium. Richard Hamilton was crying, openly and without shame, perhaps for the first time in decades. Tyler offered him a small nod, not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. Hope that someday Richard might learn the same secret his son had discovered. "So to my classmates, as we leave here and begin the next chapter of our lives, remember this: success isn't about the cars you drive or the houses you live in or the companies you inherit. Success is about the people who show up for you when everything falls apart, and the people you show up for in return." Tyler paused, gathering himself for the final words. "The secret isn't about having everything. It's about giving everything you have to the people who matter. Love multiplies when shared, and the poorest man can be the richest teacher if his heart is full." The applause was thunderous, but Tyler barely heard it. He was looking at Jim, who was mouthing, "I'm proud of you, son," and at Danny, who was giving him a thumbs up, and at the family they'd built together from broken pieces and second chances. After the ceremony, as families clustered together for photos and congratulations, Tyler found himself face to face with his father. Richard Hamilton looked older, humbler, like a man who'd spent 6 months examining his choices and finding them wanting. "Tyler," Richard said quietly, That was beautiful." "Thank you." They stood in awkward silence for a moment before Richard spoke again. "I've been thinking about what you said. About Patterson. About what happened 8 years ago. I've instructed our legal department to review the case to see if there's anything we can do to make amends." Tyler studied his father's face, looking for signs of manipulation or corporate calculation. Instead, he saw something he'd never seen before: genuine remorse. "Dad," Tyler said carefully, Are you doing this for me, or because it's the right thing to do? Richard was quiet for a long moment. I'm not sure I know the difference anymore, but I'd like to learn. It wasn't reconciliation. That would take time, perhaps years. But it was a beginning, a crack in the corporate armor that might someday let love seep through. Tyler! Danny's voice cut through the crowd. Come on, Jim's taking us to Romano's to celebrate. And this time, you're buying MIT scholarship, boy. Tyler grinned, the weight of the moment lifting. Coming. He turned back to his father. Dad, would you like to join us? It's just pizza, nothing fancy, but... Richard's eyes widened with surprise, and something that might have been hope. I'd like that, if you're sure. I'm sure, Tyler said. But fair warning, Jim's going to want to discuss your company's safety protocols, and Danny's going to make you prove you know the infield fly rule. For the first time in years, Richard Hamilton smiled a real smile. I'll take my chances. As they walked toward Romano's, Tyler, Danny, Jim, and surprisingly, Richard, Tyler thought about the secret he'd learned over the past year. It wasn't complicated or revolutionary. It was simply this. Love is a choice you make every day, with every action, in every relationship. And when you choose love over fear, grace over judgment, family over fortune, everything else falls into place. The setting sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Romano's Pizza, where a billionaire's son, a security guard, a scholarship student, and a CEO who was learning to be a father sat around a checkered tablecloth and discovered what wealth really meant. Tyler Hamilton had finally learned the secret to success. And the best part was, it was a secret he could share with everyone he met for the rest of his life. In the distance, Westfield Preparatory Academy stood silent in the evening light, its trophy cases gleaming with brass and glass. But the real trophies, love, family, second chances, were sitting around a pizza table, proving that sometimes the most precious things can't be bought, only earned through the daily choice to show up for the people who matter most. The secret was simple. Love multiplies when shared. And Tyler Hamilton, once a failing student sitting alone in marble hallways, had learned to multiply it beyond measure.